ready for our next section, and that is the Great War. So, God, my hair is driving me nuts. Sorry, people. All right, so Great War. This is our next section of notes. And as always, we're going to start out with the long-term causes of the Great War. So during the time period of which this war occurred, that's what it was called, the Great War, the war to end all wars. It only becomes World War One when we have World War II. So I think it's important to note throughout this whole time period that everyone thought this was it. This was the war. We were never going to do this again. That this war was so catastrophic and so horrifically debilitating to the continent of Europe that we would never do this again. World War I is much, much more significant in the history of Europe than it is in the history of the United States. The United States comes in the very last year of the war. Europe had been fighting already for 4 years before the United States enters. And so it's catastrophic. Even though it doesn't move very much into Europe. It's not like World War II where we're fighting in villages and bombing cities and towns. It really takes place in a very small area in Europe, but it's devastating for the loss of life. And what happens in World War I is the understanding of the industrialization of war and how humans become the byproduct of this industrialization and this just horrific loss of life for no real reason. And that's, again, the other part of World War I that is important to note. There's not a good guy or a bad guy in World War I, which is why the United States stayed out of it for so long, because there wasn't a side to pick. It begins, as I hope a lot of you already know, because of an assassination. And so we got to get to that point. So if we look at our long-term causes, that is our first page. It begins with alliances. And now, here's the bad thing about these lectures. I do not have a board to write on, and I have not figured out how to do that on this thing yet. Maybe I will. But I do want you to write somewhere on your notes that World War I was started by maniacs. And so I'm going to tell you what each one of those stands for. M is for militarism. A is for alliance. And here's where I don't know how to spell maniacs. Main. I is imperialism. N is nationalism. A is for alliances again. And C is for colonies. So that's maniacs. That's what we're looking at. What starts it? Those things are what starts World War I. So our long-term causes, again, are in the alliances. And we have 2 alliances that we have to look at, the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. The Triple Alliance is Germany and Austria, the Ottoman Empire, and then eventually Italy will go back and forth. Italy will be a weird country. And then the Triple Entente is will be Great Britain, France, and Russia. That will be how that rolls out. So we've got all these things on the beginning. We've got all these different alliances. Obviously, we don't need to know any of those in depth. And we look on page 2 at the arms race. And the arms race, arms, again, are weapons. That's what we call them. And this arms race is the industrialization that has happened, this industrialization period. So what has happened over our first industrialization, our second industrialization, Europe has exploded. We've got motor cars, we've got trains, we've got dynamos, which are generators, we've got phones, electricity, and then we start moving into weapons of war. So it's important to remember when we started this, we had this long century, we call it, from the end of the Napoleonic Wars to 1914, where we really don't have a major global or European conflict. We've got all those little revolutions that pop up, squashed right away. We have that small Crimea War, but we don't really have anything that rivals those Napoleonic European continent wars. And so people forget what that really looks like and what war means. So as well as doing this industrialization and radios and phonographs and cars, we're also doing it with weapons. And most importantly, these weapons also include battleships and for Germany, U-boats. And we're escalating. You've got 5 boats, I'm going to make 6 boats. You've got 6 boats, I'm going to have 7 boats. You've got a artillery that can throw a, a shot the size of a Volkswagen. I'm going to get one that will do the size of 2 Volkswagens. So everyone is escalating this arms race. And that's what the other A is, not another alliance. The other A is the arms race. Sorry about that. Again, I don't have anything to write down. So scratch that last A in maniacs. That's the arms race, not alliances again. If we look on page 2, especially B2, British policy was to have its fleet larger than the combined fleets of any 2 rival nations. That's incredible, right? So Great Britain, who has ruled the sea, always with the idea of whatever 2 nations are 2 and 3, we're going to have more ships than them put together. At a certain point, they aren't able to do that, especially when Germany becomes a country. And so that escalates. We keep escalating and escalating and escalating. Again, imperialism ties into that. Everyone's searching for different countries. Germany and the United States almost come to blows during the Spanish-American War over the Philippines and Guam. Everybody's looking for all these different little islands where they can make ports for their ships and gather resources for their crew. So again, this escalation. And then on page 3, the really big one is nationalism. And nationalism will take hold on the Balkan Peninsula. And the Balkan Peninsula is part of the Austrian Habsburg Empire. And on that peninsula, there will be a slew of different nationalities: Croats, Serbs, Croatians. There'll be different religions: Christians, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslims, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and then also languages and heritage. It is called the powder keg of Europe because we've got all of these nationalities on this peninsula controlled by the Austrian Habsburg Empire. And this will be a place that will explode. Now, the other thing that is important, especially for 1914, is that in 1911, 1912, 1913, in the summer, exactly the same time as what's going to happen in 1914, we have these little summer blow-ups. And there'll be some little Serbian revolt, some little Croat revolt, and the Austrian Habsburg Empire will be able to squash it. And so when 1914 happens in the summer with the assassination of Archduke, Europe kind of thinks the same thing. Oh my gosh, it's those summer crazy, hot-blooded Balkan Peninsula people trying to raise up things again. It'll get squashed and it will go away. What we have to figure out is why in 1914 that didn't happen like it had in the previous years. And those previous years had also had assassinations of leaders and nobilities. So we have to figure that out as well. So again, we've got on that page this Ottoman Empire. We also have the Ottoman Empire as part of that, this old sick man of Europe who's going to take up that place. And we'll slowly start to look at how and when these things happened. So on page 4, you've got that list of, gosh, I got really close that time. First Balkan War, Second Balkan War, and those little summer heated, what rest of Europe calls those just crazy Serbians on that Balkan Peninsula that are hot-blooded and they fight about everything, and it doesn't have any impact on us. That's what's going to happen. Now, the immediate cause is the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand. And I am going to look and see how much time I have up here. Okay, I'm at 9 minutes. Okay, sorry about that close-up. The Archduke Ferdinand. So what happens with the Archduke Ferdinand? He is the nephew of the emperor of the Austrian Habsburg Empire. He has no children. Ferdinand marries Sophie, who is of definitely a lower class than what the emperor would have wanted his nephew to marry as the heir to the throne. He doesn't like his nephew, and he certainly does not like Sophie at all. So anytime they are able to get out and go away so he doesn't have to see them or look at them, the emperor is fine. Archduke, you want to go and take a chance in Serbia in the summertime? You just go right ahead. So that's what the Archduke does. Like many nobility, they tend to think that they know everything. And when the Archduke says, hey, I'm going to come to Serbia and bring my wife and hang out, the Archduke was met with a call from the Serbians like, it's probably not a good idea, because if you come here, you probably are going to get killed. And that is exactly what happens. He arrives, the mayor greets the Archduke and Sophie and the Archduchess Sophie at the train station, and the mayor's got blood already on him because pipe bombs are already exploding in the town. They have publicized the parade route of which his motorcade is going to take, and the mayor is reading this welcome with blood on his hands and blood, and he finally just stops and says, I don't think this is a good idea. You know, we've already had people blowing up pipe bombs. They want to kill you. This isn't a good idea, especially since your parade route is published. Everybody's going to see and know where you're going. So they discuss it. And again, the Archduke, being an Archduke, I'm going to do what I want anyway, says, well, how about we just change the parade route? Well, here's the problem with an empire. Lots of different languages. And so the Archduke changed his parade route in his language, auf Deutsch. He's Austrian. He just spoke in German, and everyone else should follow through and know exactly what I'm doing. Why? Because I'm the Archduke. Sad to note that his driver was Czech, didn't understand German. And so he kept to the original parade route. And as the original driver drives, he realizes, oop, I'm not going the same way as everybody else. He tries to back up. This little guy from a terrorist group called the Black Hand comes up very close range and shoots the Archduke and Sophie and assassinates them. And that is the beginnings of World War I. Because what happens next is this series of events. The series of events begins with Kaiser Wilhelm saying, Austria, whatever you need, we've got your back. That's the alliance. In other words, a blank check, whatever you need from us. Military help, financial aid, whatever. So Austria, with that blank check, says to Serbia, we want the guy that shot the Archduke. His name is Princip. We want him. And Austria says, we want him and we're going to try him in Austria. Serbia said, no, you're not. That crime happened in Serbia. We know he's not going to get a fair trial, so we're going to keep him here. And that goes back and forth. Russia says to Austria, hey, these Serbians, they're our Slavs, they're our dudes. You need to take a step back. And so Russia mobilizes its troops on the border of Austria. That's provocation. Countries, no matter what country you are, do not like when militaries mobilize up against your border. It is provocation. So Austria said, Russia, take a step back. Germany said, take a step back. So July, I always want to get my date right, July 28th, Austria declares war on Serbia. And this is really important. July 29th, Austria begins bombarding Belgrade. That's the capital of Serbia. So the first military attempts at war comes from Austria. They bomb Serbia. They're bombing it, like Belgrade, their capital, bombing it. In response, Russia then mobilizes its troops, and France says, oh, heck fire. This is what we knew was going to happen after that Franco-Prussian War. So France mobilizes its troops on the border of Germany. And at that point, Germany decides, hey, we hate France. We're going to declare war on France. So on August 1st, Germany decides we're going to declare war on France. And on August 3rd, begin to invade Belgium. And that begins World War I. And I think I'm going to finish this like right on time at 15 minutes. All right, so that's our first day. Make sure that you're keeping up with the notes. Make sure you're keeping up with your homework. I'm going to post on here calendar and all that stuff. So bye. See you later. let me know if you have any questions. I got a text box for questions. Talk to you later. Bye, people.